As you can imagine, my list of intentions and creations and all the things that I like to do is long, always, every day. Sounds familiar? But what I'm noticing recently is this interesting space between motivation and inspiration just when it's time to wind down or when I'm out of my office. And then when I actually have allocated time to tackle those lists, it's like a paralysis. Either I feel tired, or I feel scared, or I feel overwhelmed, or I just feel resistance. So I thought, what if I share my thought process and how I walk myself through such examples, and maybe it can help somebody, even if it's just one person listening to this. So, I want to preface this by saying that pushing through is nothing that I'm afraid of. It's actually something that I was trained in, and I've done it very well as a former athlete, as a former student athlete, as any business owner or career person. When you have things to do, you do them, come rain or shine. When you're a parent and you have little kids, if things need to get done for your kids, you do them, whether you feel like it or not. When they're hungry, it doesn't matter. If you've been already up for I don't know how many hours and you're exhausted and all you want to do is go to bed. But I digress. So there was a moment in my life when I found myself on the I don't even know what the proper word for that would be, but I found myself in a space when it's like a tipping point between the old way of pushing through and very masculine energy and dabbing into this new version of myself that was emerging. I had no idea what it's going to look like. I did not have the answers. All I knew that the old way was no longer working, and the new way was scary because everything I had built, everything I have achieved, all the accomplishments, all the tangible things that gave me a sense of worth were built on this pushing through and commitment and, this hardcore achieving. Now leaning into and surrendering into and softening into this new version of myself, of course, it was freaking scary. Moreover, it was like a mental gymnastics, talking myself through it and convincing myself that to get to the next level, to where my vision is, and the space that I know is awaiting for me and that I'm getting ready to step into, is on the other side of that proverbial glass panel, that I needed to shatter that glass panel to get to the space of softness and attraction and allowance and expansion and ease and enjoyment and fulfillment on physical, emotional, mental, energetic levels. And I would be lying if I told you that was a one time practice or that was a one time thing or just some magic 3-step formula that got me through it. No, it was and still remains a practice, a commitment. Every single day I find myself in a scenario when I get to choose how to show up. And through those years and with practice and through my own mentoring and growth and development and all the work that I have done on myself and with others, have strengthened this muscle of discernment and allowed me to really tap into awareness of where am I, what am I feeling, what am I experiencing, what is coming up, and why is it coming up. So, as I mentioned today, whether it's feeling tired, whether it's feeling scared, whether it's feeling overwhelmed, or resistance, those were like different avenues, if you will. So, which one am I gonna take? Which one am I gonna address? And which one is the real anchor holding me back? So, the way that I approach this. First and foremost, when it comes to tiredness and exhaustion, I have noticed, and I started to notice, and I started to track patterns, my own rhythm that somehow aligns with my own female monthly cycle and also with the lunar cycle. It also aligns with seasons. In retrospective, basketball was a perfect sport for me because in default, springtime is, fall time is time for preparations. Winter season is the high end, intensive, competitive, a lot of travel, a lot of games, very, very, very high level, high intensity. And then towards spring is just the peak, I would say. The championships are being played in early spring and the season starts to wind down. And then in my experience, early spring, it was kind of, practice would ease it, and I would have some space for other things in my life. Now, technically, summer was a little bit tricky because my summers were reserved for national team training camps and tournaments and so on and so forth. But otherwise, summer would be a season of rest and fun, and summers in my home were spent with family. They were spent um, by the ocean. We would go to the seaside for at least 2 to 3. One summer, my sister and I got to spend 6 weeks by the shore, right by the ocean with our baby. And I'll never forget that summer. So that was kind of my natural rhythm. When I start to notice that I feel tired when it comes to ticking off all the boxes and knocking things off my to-do list. This is the first thing I tap into. Am I physically tired? Am I emotionally tired? Am I tired because of what day it is, of the activities that I've had that day? Am I tired because things were out of, let's say, a routine? Was it something highly engaging going on in the morning that left me little energy in the afternoon? All those little things. Environmental. Absolutely. That impacts me as an empath. I'm highly susceptible to, in my environment, to people around me. Now, of course, as a strategist and a planner, I am able to, even in that case, minimize that sense of tiredness by planning. Meaning that if I can plan ahead, I will adjust my workload, I will adjust my priorities, I will make sure that a highly intensive day is followed by a day of rest and recalibration. Weekends, for example, are such an experience when that was actually more prevailing while we were in the States with typical careers. And weekends were the only time of the week when all four of us were together. Otherwise, I was mainly by myself throughout the week and the kids, or with my husband without the kids because the kids were in school. So it was kind of like opposite schedules, but never all four of us in the same room. So Mondays were usually my day of just taking a breather to recalibrate my energy, to set my intentions, to plan out the week ahead. Fridays were usually very productive, and Saturdays also. But here, now we're in Europe, and both of us are working from home, so it's a little bit different dynamic, and it took us a while actually to get used to that dynamic. But even then, we both notice when we need this space and we need this spaciousness, and we can plan and adjust accordingly. So that is this feeling of feeling tired. And even that tiredness, it's different, when you feel tired in your soul that not even the nap can help. When you're tired, like burning out tired, it's a very, very different tired. I honestly cannot describe it right now because I believe that everybody experiences it differently. I needed 3 trips to the ER to finally take it seriously. But the tired of, oh, I just had to wake up earlier, I had a bad night's sleep, or, I was kept up by kids or the dogs who needed something in the middle of the night, or, went to bed later than usual, or had to wake up a lot earlier than usual. All of those things, I know it's okay, it's a momentarily thing, and I can adjust. I can either decide and choose to push through, or I can give myself grace and say, yeah, you know what, today I rest. Whatever, let me reset my priorities and move things around. Okay, so this is the tired part. Um, Fear. Fear is an interesting concept to me because I am a person who is by default optimistic, and I also see, as a strategist, I always see like all the different possibilities, all the different scenarios of how things can go. And as you know, many of you might relate, I'm also a person who tends to overthink things a lot of times. So the fear might not even be rooted in making a mistake, or what if I say the wrong thing. But for me, it's deeper, and it's something that I have been contemplating recently. Actually, what is it that's holding me back when it comes to such things that, let's say, like an outreach, or a launch, or something of that nature that might come so easy to somebody? Picking up a phone and making a call. What is it holding me back? What am I so afraid of? Pivoting in a market, expanding from, US centric clientele to a global clientele. Um, what is the perception? What am I afraid of? And I came to a realization, actually, that more than my own fear, this is something that's being grounded through generations. Um, and it's this ancestral fear of never being enough, no matter how much it gets done, no matter what gets done. There's never going to be enough, or it's not never going to be good enough. So when I made this connection, again, I can't say that magically all the problems disappeared because that would be a lie. They did not. But making that connection gave me a tool, another tool in my toolbox, and another layer of awareness with which I can now navigate my day to day. When I sit down and I'm like, oh, I should really reach out to this person. I should, I don't know, promote this launch harder. I should let more people know about this new thing, or whatever it is. Am I afraid that it's not gonna sit right and it's gonna upset somebody? No. I ended up realizing that I'm afraid that all the work that gets to be done for this to be successful, according to some gurus and checklists and strategies that I paid a gazillion of dollars for, just might not be enough, and they still might not help me reach my main goals, financial goals especially, that I have set very high years ago. I know they're doable. I have seen them being crushed. I helped others crush the same goals. But for me, for some reason, some of them are still very elusive. And one of the hooks holding me back is this fear that whatever I do is never going to be enough, so why even bother? Why even try? Why waste the energy? Why waste the time? Why? Right? So I don't know if this is helpful to you, whoever you are that need to hear this. I trust that whatever you needed to hear, you're receiving, because, like I said, I don't have any magical solutions without knowing what you're going through and without knowing you and your story. But what I can offer, speaking of stories, is rewriting our narratives. Like, I started to rewrite my own, and that was based also on self-awareness of what makes me tick, how do I operate, what is my zone of genius, and what is my nature through which I move through life. And I realized that it might not be initiating because it's an intellectual knowledge, so to speak, that I need to do something, but I respond to the heart knowing. I respond to soul's whispers. I respond to initiations from my environment. And when I feel them within me, in my own body, and when I feel them in a certain way, then I'm like, oh yeah, now okay, now I get to respond, and now I know the result is gonna be there. And again, it's even funny how oftentimes, even knowing that, I find myself in spaces when I still try to outsmart this, and I still try to talk myself into overthinking, intellectualizing things that can only be described as an intuition and inspiration, and divine orchestration, right? All right, so the next thing that I mentioned earlier was overwhelm. Overwhelm is something that I deal with quite successfully, but not to the point where I can say I never feel overwhelmed. This is something not in my vocabulary at all. First, it's probably self inflicted because I am a high achiever with high flying goals and vision that's larger than life. So, by default, it's going to be overwhelming. Even breaking down the steps, they can be very simple steps, but they're going to be big, or it can be smaller steps, but the amount of them is going to be overwhelming. But what's also overwhelming to me sometimes, it's something that I noticed for the first time when I was actually in graduate school. I consciously noticed it then when I was in graduate school, and I was one of the oldest players on our team, actually one of the oldest players in the league, because the age differences of transferring and so on and so forth. um, this pressure, overwhelming pressure that I would put on myself, and perception and belief system that I developed around what does it mean to be a senior player? What does it mean to be a senior leader? What does it mean to be the most experienced person on the court? What does it mean to ... You can insert whatever situation you're finding yourself in. And that created a incredible amount of pressure and overwhelm, to the point when I no longer enjoyed playing basketball. I no longer wanted to even practice. I mean, okay, who even enjoys practice, if we're honest. But for me, it was something that was just so overwhelming. I even told my coach I just wanted to quit. I want to be done. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. Um, I went through those phases before, but like I said, it was the first time I was consciously aware of it was as a senior graduate student, actually my last year of basketball. And I've experienced it as well, also in business. And I'm going to tell you exactly how that shows up for me personally. This is the 14th year that I have been in business. And for a long time, if anything triggered me, it was the, to six figures, to six-figure months, to seven-figure businesses within 3 months, within a year, within 2 years for those newcomers. Um, Especially the ones that I knew, or let's say I had experienced working with them in different capacities, and I knew that they had less experience that I had, they had less knowledge that I had, they had less finesse that I had, they had less comprehension of whatever that they were doing that I had. For a fact, I knew that, and yet they were passing me left and right in terms of business and revenue and clientele and so on and so forth. Nothing triggered me more than that. And that sent me into a downward spiral of just feeling overwhelmed with not knowing what to do, not knowing how to go about it, what to do with my own business, how to dig myself out of this hole. And it almost made me feel like I was a kid in a sandbox, screaming for attention, trying to get the attention of people in the sandbox, trying to prove that what I was doing was good enough. What I was doing was actually even better. What I was doing was whatever, you know, dot, 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 without even realizing that I didn't even belong into the sandbox. The people that I was meant to work with and serve and support were not even in the sandbox. But this feeling was just so overwhelming. And as a strategist, I could sit down and on paper, I could put down the best strategy ever. I mean, my clients would pay me 5 figures for strategies like this. And I would take action and I would knock it out of the park, but the results were just not there. Why? Because of the energetic misalignment. Because you know, I was doing things for the sake of doing them. And that might sound familiar too. Just like in basketball, I did not want to play. I did not want to do this anymore. I still showed up for practice. I did everything I had to do. I outran my teammates. I outshot my teammates. I outplayed played the competition, but it was not fun. It was dreading. It was exhausting. Um, it was just overwhelming. And it was, I want to say that whether it was in basketball or in business, it was like peeling back the layers of an onion. Okay, what is it that I'm telling myself? What am I attaching this result to? What is it that's holding me back? What conviction? What mindset? What belief system? What emotions? What connections that I'm making? What is holding me back? What is so overwhelming? And little by little, step by step, I was able to simply dissolve that. And most importantly, have fun again. So even, when I was setting up to record this transmission right now, I felt totally overwhelmed. Like, where do I even start? Is this even something that's worth telling? Do I even bother recording? What if I mess up? What do I even have to say? Is this, a million overwhelming questions. And then I found a space here. It's a little off the road, a quiet parking lot in the shade of trees, with a beautiful view over the old town and the hills in the back. And pulling out the recorder, I'm like, I surrender. I trust that whatever comes through is exactly what needs to be transmitted for the exact person on the other side that needs to receive it, and it's open and ready and available to receive it. And I'm just a channel here. I'm just a messenger. And let's have fun. A few words in, and we're jamming. And it is fun. So, last thing that I wanted to touch upon is resistance. Many years ago, I was on a mastermind call with one of my mentors who so brilliantly and eloquently articulated this framework that really stayed with me ever since. We were talking about how oftentimes we feel, especially in the spiritual world, I'm feeling a resistance, and then you do all the funny stuff and you bypass whatever it is, and you're just in this happy space and everything is awesome, until it isn't, I shall add. But what she actually pointed out was, everybody seems to, not everybody, many of us focused on what this resistance is about, meaning focusing on the bridge between where we were and what we said we wanted or what we desired or what we tried to call in. It might not even be the bridge that was the problem. It might be the perception or the meaning that we attach to that thing waiting for us on the other side. So, for example, I have, once she articulated that, it was like a little light bulb going off. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I have seen it, and now I had words to actually label and compartmentalize and store and have ready for, further experiences. I now knew what I was dealing with when I saw it in myself and in my own clients. So, for example, some of the resistances that I've noticed, whether in myself or my clients, one of the very typical things, like, I just want to have more time. I want to have more time. I want to have more time freedom. I want to spend more time with my family and friends, and I want to travel more, but I'm stuck here working and so on and so forth. Well, even if we sat down and we mapped out their schedule and we rearranged things and we found extra 10 hours in their schedule per week, which, by the way, is one of the easiest things to do. Really, you'd be surprised how easy it is to find extra 10 hours in a week. Um, the problem wasn't that. They never took action on that because the real problem for many was not the need for 10 more hours. It was the fact that when they thought about spending 10 more hours with their family, even though they say they wanted to, the subconscious, like, oh shit, now that means more nurturing, and it means more cooking, and it means more cleaning, and it means paying more attention and being very present with the little ones, and it means having difficult conversation with older ones, and it means having to finally have that conversation with the spouse that we've been so greatly avoiding, masterfully avoiding for all these years. Or traveling. Okay, great, but that means that I need to now start thinking about what we need to take. I need to start thinking about what kind of food to buy and how much leading up to our trip so it doesn't spoil while we are away. That also means I need to clean up the place and put things away so that we don't come home into a mess. It also means planning the itinerary, spending time on researching flights and hotels and activities and budgeting for that, and the list goes on and 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 on. So that was the overwhelming part that subconsciously was holding them back from actually finding and implementing things to gain those 10 hours back. See? So even in my own world, with resistance, when like, okay, I have those big financial goals, and even big, it's a silly word for me because I have done so much work and I have been lucky and honored to be in spaces where I've seen some real wealth and I have seen some real net worth being held, being moved around, being distributed, being celebrated, even being gained. So in that sense, I also believe in miracles. I don't think that there's any goal too small or too big. I might even argue that most likely too small than too big. I have seen it happen. I have seen it happen for and with and to people like you and I, from all walks of lives. So from that angle, I know it's available. I know it's possible. I know it can be done. And the fact that I hold it in my vision and I hold it in my energetic field, I know it's available for me as well. And also, this is a beautiful opportunity for me to really work on the wounds. Again, epigenetics plays a huge role here, and social contracts, right? And I started to notice this, especially living on two continents with two entirely different cultures with incredibly different priorities and value structures. So, if I share this with you very honestly, I believe again that to some it might be just flying over the head, and to some it might be, oh my gosh, yes, that's it. Okay, so, and I have not spoken about this before actually in public, so here we go. All right, so when it comes to money and finances, my husband and I have already made huge leaps, and it also gave us the opportunity to, especially to me, I cannot speak for him actually, but for me to work on those generational wounds when it comes to money and the social contracts that I mentioned. Because in a space where I hail from, the culture that I hail from is very quick to cut you at your knees if you're standing out of the average in any way, shape, or form. That applies specifically to entrepreneurs, to business owners, to successful managers, to anybody who is making incredible amount of money. And by incredible, I say for this region, because compared on a global level, it's oftentimes laughable what those amounts would be. Anyhow, the need not to stand up and stand out, the need to just blend in, the need to prove your worth through hard work and not so much through intellect, the need to really hustle and grind for the money and not allowing it to come through flow and ease, that is pretty much encoded in this world that I hail from. Then life took me to a whole different continent, to a whole different culture, where money is perceived very differently, when conversations around finances are happening very differently, and where wealth is generated and held and distributed differently. So all of a sudden I was learning how to not just exist but navigate and ultimately thrive in a world where I learned what my worth was. I learned how to put a value to the services that come the easiest to me, things that are the most fun to me, and how income can be generated through things that I didn't even consider to be things, and people were willing to pay, and I was like, whoa, really? What? However, I kept bumping into that glass ceiling. I just couldn't break through those specific numerical goals, so to speak. And I mentioned earlier, I got triggered very easily when I saw others. Happy for them, and at the same time triggered because it wasn't me. So, I'm sharing this with you because being in those both worlds, I know how sometimes things that we consider overwhelming and we feel resistance towards might not even be ours. So for me, resisting that, reaching those amounts that I have on my vision board, that I have strategies for, that I actually have in existence on the paper, I had to peel back the layers. Like, okay, where's the resistance coming from? And it was not the bridge, it was the perception of what is awaiting on the other side. And what was awaiting on the other side was still this conviction that if I succeed, or if I am too successful, my society, my community, my culture will discard me. They will try to cut me at the knees, and they will try to discredit me. I will feel abandoned. I will be felt like a loser, like a selfish person, like a self-absorbed person, and so on and so forth. And it's interesting that coming back to this culture after being in the States for almost 20 years, I am glad that I got to experience the United States mentality around money for 20 years, because it expanded my capacity. It expanded my capacity to desire more, to attract more, to hold more, to navigate this world differently. And yet, I noticed how the hooks, some of them came back. Just recently, I was talking to one of my mentors. It's like, you know what, I'm noticing how I try to shrink my vision. I try to shrink my goals. I try to shrink my desires to just fit in and convince myself, oh, it's not, do I really need that much? I can be fine just with ... So, about resistance. All right, we are now nearing the time when I need to bring this to a conclusion, because I am on a schedule to come pick up my kiddo from one of her activities. But like I said, I do hope that this transmission, the message here, is received, that you got out of it exactly what you were hoping for and what you needed. And if you have any questions, please do let me know. In the meantime, I'll be sharing about my upcoming workshops in the library of resources that is already readily available for free through my channels, whether it's my website, LinkedIn, or Facebook, so that you can start exploring and experiencing, even if it's testing, what is it's available for you. And here we're talking about, my work is not just monolith. My work, sometimes I joke, is so diverse it's impossible to describe it, and I wish sometimes I could. But there's things for life, there's things for businesses, there's things for relationships, there's things for time management, there's all sorts of things. There are resources available if you're already ticked off all the boxes and you just need to slow down and relax and reset and reimagine things and just be. And the other way around, if you're in a space when you're ready to put the pedal to the metal and you're like, okay, let's go, there's things for you there as well. And if you're a person who is like, yeah, you know what, all this self-study stuff is awesome, but I need somebody to be in this space with me, not just to guide me and to be a mirror and to call me out and to also inspire and motivate and support me, but also just to share the energetic container with, to hold space for the bigger version of me that I'm becoming, then we can have this conversation as well. Through private mentorship, there's a couple of different options actually. I have things available if you're just looking for a one day deep down, very strategic approach to solving, the biggest question, the burning thing that's in front of you. I'm really, really excited about the 3-day retreat where we get together one-on-one in my hometown or some other European space, and we get to rewrite your story. And that means it might be your narrative, how you perceive yourself, where you've been up to now, what is emerging, and realign you with what that is, whether it's your business model, whether it's I want to say a model for your lifestyle, whether it's a service suit that needs adjustment, whether it's a framework for your memoir. Possibilities are endless. And then after those 30 days we are after 3 days we also spend additional 30 days together for integration support, because we all know that when you're away on a retreat, things are awesome, but then you come back in the real life, things are again quite different. So anyway, and then of course for longer term, we have a couple of options too. 6, 9, 12, 18 months, all inclusive if you want, season pass as I call it. So yeah, if this calls to you, let's have a conversation around that as well. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful reminder of the day. Stay well, stay safe, sending you love. Bye.